Hello and welcome to the How to Plan EOCross and Inspection tutorial. So first of all, what is EOCross? Well, EOCross just stands for Edge Orientation Cross, and you basically solve edge orientation from ZZ and solve the cross at the same time. So pretty simple, but why should you use EOCross? Well, traditionally ZZ has been dominated by what's called EO line, where instead of doing edge orientation and a cross, you just place two opposite line pieces in the front and back, and you get to solve the F2L using a more block building approach as opposed to doing a CFOP pair approach. The thing is that it's been shown that this is inferior to EOCross for several reasons. First of all, EO line ergonomics is not very optimal. There's a lot of grip switching between R and L, but not in a way that's just where it's RUR pair and then LUR pair, but it's like RU and then an L move to pair up something into the back. And so overall, it's just not good ergonomics compared to EOCross. And then as well, the look ahead is worse because it's more blind spots. In EOCross, you don't have to worry about these pieces, but maybe an F12 edge that belongs here can get stuck right here and you won't be able to see it, or even in the back. So there's just a lot of blind spots. And so overall, it's been determined that the efficiency you get from EO line is just not worth the TPS ability and the better ergonomics from EOCross. So EOCross is also rotationless, also really good, just like EO line. However, like before, there's no blind spot here, right? And so once you solve BL, the BL pair, there's pretty much effectively no blind spots since all edge reduction is a lot easier for EOCross. And so overall, EOCross is just much better as far as the F12 step goes. However, the problem is that during inspection, EOCross is much harder to plan than EO line, and actually significantly harder. So when should you start using EOCross? Well, you should pretty much start using EOCross as soon as you decide to switch to ZZ. Some people like to say that EO line is a good intermediate beginner step to EOCross. However, that's just not true. If you're going to be doing EOCross, you need to be doing it from the start because the F2L from EO line and EOCross are fundamentally different. And so it's important that if you're going to be an ZZ solver, you just start with EOCross and do EOCross from the beginning. All right, so now how do you actually approach solving EOCross? So there's pretty much two ways, which one is just a beginner version of the other. The first is just to do EO, and then from here just solve the cross pieces wherever they happen to end up, and then solve the cross. So it's really just EO and then cross. And then finally you want to move up to doing just EOCross in one step. And so you can start from EO, then cross, and then you can start trying to influence your EO solution to fit the cross. And then finally your end goal should be working up to just solving EO cross in one step and inspecting it in one step, as opposed to just thinking of it as EO then cross. Before we get to the main part of the tutorial, there's some important prerequisites you need to have. So first of all, you need to be pretty comfortable with EO. And I mean being able to find a solution and plan it with relative ease. So you don't have to be an expert master, but you should definitely be relatively comfortable with it. And so if you're not, this tutorial will probably not be helpful for you because I'm going to be going through EO solutions pretty fast and kind of just, pulling them out of thin air. And if it seems like that's what's happening, then the tutorial is not going to be helpful for you. So there's already some good EO resources. For example, Error has a great video on the ZMS channel. It's a beginner EO tutorial. So I'll link that in the description. There's also FMC EO tutorials, which are really good. So there's definitely plenty of EO resources already. So go check those out if you're not comfortable yet. Second of all, you need to be familiar with CFOP cross. And I mean this, or I say this because you need to know how to place edges adjacently. You need to know your adjacent edge relations, or at least be able to figure them out if you're doing color neutral or something. And you need to know like where your opposites are. I mean, these seem like they should be basic, but I'm just throwing them out there because if you're not comfortable with this yet, then maybe you should go practice CFOP cross. I'm not saying you necessarily have to be able to plan CFOP cross like effortlessly, but you should be relatively comfortable. So for example, right here, blue and red go next to each other like this. But if you didn't know that blue or red is left of blue on white, and you put the green there, then that would be wrong. However, if you put blue there instead, then this would be right. So knowing whether to put green or blue next to red is important, and obviously it's important for EOCross as well. Knowing that red and orange don't go next to each other, right? So you can actually do cross correctly. So basically, good EO and being relatively comfortable with cross, knowing your adjacents and opposites. I also want to go over the kind of progression that people might take to EOCross. So the first way is that people will try to say, okay, first be able to plan EO, then try to plan EO plus one edge, then EO plus 2 edges, then EO plus 3, and only moving on when you're comfortable with the step that you're on up to EO plus 4, which is literally just EOCross, of course. And so that's one way to do it. I personally didn't do it to get better at EOCross. I kind of just went straight into it, which goes into the second way. You can just kind of just try to plan the full thing and just see if you can do it. And after a while, it just becomes easier. That's personally the method I used. I don't know which is better. So honestly, just think of the kind of way you learn things and just do what you think will be better for you. Or you can just try both out. But I don't think it's a big deal, whichever way you learn. Just know that those are basically the main two approaches. Just going from EO plus 1 to all the way to plus 4, which is full EOCross, or just doing full EOCross, just like giving yourself a lot of time to plan and just being able to plan the full thing, or at least trying to. Okay, so the rest of the tutorial is going to go as follows. Essentially, it's just going to be how to do EO, then cross, then how to do EO, then cross, but with some influencing. And then finally, the most advanced, which is the goal, is just being able to see EOCross and how to do that as well. So the scrambles are all going to be in the description. Scramble with white top, green front, so you can follow along. All right, so now for the EO then cross part. So how do you actually do EO then cross? To actually do EOCross, you pretty much just do optimal EO and then memorize where the cross pieces end up and then solve the cross from there. So it's important that your EO solution is really short so it's easier to plan and so the cross pieces aren't moving as much. So the goal here is understanding what pieces don't move what or which pieces move what. So just learning which turns affect what, how turns affect whatever you're trying to like memorize or look for. So this is pretty much the thing that you need to understand. And this will carry all the way over to the advanced section where you're just planning EOCross. So you have to think of where pieces are, where they end up, and you have to know how they move relative to each other. You gotta try to memorize pieces where they are in relation to each other. So let's just go to the first scramble. Right here we have a 4 flip, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so we have a 2-move EO solution. Notice that the EO solution actually doesn't affect any cross pieces. If I just do U prime F, that solves EO without affecting the cross pieces. So we need to now think of a cross solution because we actually have, and this scramble is really nice because we have a visual of where the cross pieces are going to end up after EO solution. And so from here, we can think of the cross. So we memorize U prime and then an F turn. So we know that's our EO solution. And then here, we see that red and green are placed correctly to each other. Orange is not. Since red's here, blue goes here. But we know blue's up here. So when we do an R, we have green, red, blue. And then when we do this R, the orange will end up here, right? Then to solve these three in relation to each other, we just have to do a D prime, right? Because once we do this R, the blue's gonna end up here, red, green, and then it's just a D prime away from being solved, right? So here, since a bunch of pieces are starting to move now, it's important to kind of keep track of things, but like group them in pairs. So for example, these 3 pieces, once I solve them, I like to think of this as like one unit. So this whole unit is moving because all these pieces are solved in relation to each other. So I think of these pieces moving as a whole unit, right? So I think, okay, once I do an R, these pieces just need a D and they're all solved. When I do an R, this orange is here, right? And so then once I do the RD and the pieces are solved, the orange is going to be here, so I just need to do an R prime. So in total, it's just RD prime, RD, which solves these 3 pieces right here, and then an R prime to solve the rest of the cross. And we just have to remember that we need to do the EO solution first. So to solve EO, then RD, like I said, doing RD will place these 3 in relation to each other, and then we'll solve these 3. Remember thinking of these 3 moving, since they're also in relation to each other, think of these moving as one unit. And then since the orange is here, then we need to put it here. So now we have solved EOCross. So obviously this example is really easy. I mean, like, yeah, it's very easy, but the point is to show the technique and the mindset needed to actually solve it. All right, and on to Scramble 2. So here we have another 4 flip, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the EO solution is also only 2 moves. However, this time, the EO solution does move the cross pieces. So with the same kind of technique as before, we need to look at which turns are moving which pieces, right? So we need to do an L2 to put this bad edge in front. That doesn't move any cross pieces, so we can kind of just put that in the back of our mind. No, we have to do an L2. When we do the last move, let's just do an F prime, right? So L2 F prime. When we do an F prime, green goes here, or red goes up here, right? So green is the white's gonna be facing here, and the white's gonna be facing up here, right? So we need to look at the rest of these edges. So these two cross pieces are already here. This is nice because blue and orange are already in relation to each other, right? So since orange is here, red needs to go here because red's opposite orange, and then green for the same logic. So red needs to go here, green needs to go here. However, when I do an F prime, green's here, red is here, right? So what I can do is, since I know that red's going to be here, I can do a U, and that's not going to affect green because green is already here. So remember, green is here from already doing the F prime, from finishing the EO solution. Green is here, right? Red's going to be up here. So if I do a U, L2, that solves red opposite orange. And since the green is here, now green is going to be here, right? So now we think green is here. And so then we think of these already as being solved. So now we have these, at least at this point in the solution, we think of these three as being solved relative to each other. So think of whenever I move these pieces as moving them as one unit, right? So green's going to be here. So this is the spot that needs to be solved because these three are solved. I move this here as a D prime. So then the slot's going to be here, and then an L, right? And since green is here, L, and it's now down here, we're going to have to do a final D prime to move it here. So I know it's a lot to follow, but just trust me. L2 doesn't move any pieces, so that's easy to remember. F prime, so that's our EO solution. So just think of EO solution as L2 F prime. So that's already two moves. Once that happens, red goes here and green goes here. So I'm thinking of solving red into this slot right here opposite of orange. So I do U to move the red, L2. The U did not move green, so green stayed here. So remember that we're thinking of which pieces move what, or which turns move what pieces. Green stayed here, red moved over here, right? Did not move green. Then this L2 solved red, and now green's over here. So we have three pieces solved relative to each other, right? So now this is the slot that green needs to go in. When I do this D, green is able to do an L prime to move into here. Now since green's here, we already know that the whole cross is solved relative to each other, right? Green is here, so all that needs to move is, we know that green's gonna be here, it needs to move like this. So we need to do a D prime. So the whole solution, L2 F prime, we do U L2, that solves these three relative to each other. Green is going to be in the back here. Then we do a D to move the open slot here, and an L prime to insert the green. And like I said, the whole cross are relative to each other, but now to do a last, to align the cross, we know that green had to go here, so we do a D prime. Since all the cross pieces move as a unit, we have an EOCross solved. So yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of, it takes a lot of depth of planning, and I can do it relatively easy because I have experience. So this is definitely just going to be a practice thing. You need to practice. But what I'm trying to do here is just to give you the tools to kind of practice with a more focused mindset, to know exactly what to look for when you're actually, trying to drill the planning into your head. All right, so these next two scrambles are still EO than cross, but they're more of an intermediate difficulty. So the point is to show that the same fundamentals that applied before still work, even though it's going to be a bit harder. So more cross pieces moving, harder EO solutions, it shouldn't really matter. The same technique should work, albeit a bit more difficult. So for scramble 3, we have a 6 flip. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bad edges. So for this one, I'm going to do 3 plus 3. So I'm going to do a B prime. So that moves this. This is now a misoriented edge. Do a I'm going to do an L prime D to U, and that's going to solve EO. So B prime, L prime, D to U. That's my EO solution. So now let's look at where the cross pieces end up. So for orange, I see B prime moves it here, then an L prime will actually solve it, U D2. U doesn't move anything, so D, just worry about D2. D2 moves it here. So orange is going to be here. Let's look at blue. So B prime, L prime, D2U, that doesn't affect this piece at all. B prime doesn't do anything. L prime is not on this. D2U, nothing moves from this blue. So blue, when I just do this F, is going to end up here to finally do the EO solution, right? Blue ends up here. So orange and blue. Now green. So B prime, L prime doesn't move green at all. D2 doesn't move green at all either. U does. So U just moves green here. So green just moves over there. So green, blue, orange. Now finally, red. When I do B prime, nothing happens to red. L prime puts red here, but since red is in the E slice, D2U doesn't do anything to red, so red stays here. So when I do an F to put blue here, red goes here. So we have green, red, blue, orange. Now we know where the cross pieces are going to end up. So how are we going to solve them, right? So since green is here and red is here, when I move red, if I move red into here, since red is here and green is here, when I move the red, orange is going to be here, right? That actually solves blue. That solves red. Then green and orange are up here relative to each other. So I can do a U2. So orange goes here and green goes here. And then an L2, B2. So in total, B prime, L prime, as we see orange is here, U2, D2, U, D2, F. Like I said, green's here, red's here, blue and orange. So now if I solve red, then green and orange end up here, placed correctly in relation to each other. U2, and then just solve these. And there's EOCross. So a lot harder to follow, but the same principles. All right, and for scramble number 4, we have another 6 flip. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so for this EO solution, I'll probably do something like RB, R2, because what I do is RB, that moves this one good edge should be bad. R2 moves it over here. Now I have 3 bad edges. And then since this one's here, I'll do L to move this one here, D, and then now I have 4 on the front, do an F prime. That'll be my EO solution. So we have the EO solution. Now let's try to find where the cross pieces end up. And remember that we're trying to memorize where pieces are in relation to each other. So we can start solving them in relation to each other, as opposed to just, solving blue into blue where red is. So let's just look at orange first. So when we do R, orange moves here. B, R2 to move this edge over here. The B, since orange is here, moves here. So now orange is right here. And then RB, R2, and then L, D, F prime. But orange is here, and none of those L, D, or F prime moved the orange, which is over here. So all those 3 turns did not move orange. So pretty much only the first 2 turns moved orange, and the rest didn't. So we don't have to memorize that much. And then green. So we do R, B, R2. That didn't move green at all. And then we do L, D, F prime. L and D don't move green at all. Only the last F prime moves green. So green ends up here. So we have orange right here, green right here. And then let's look at red. So when we do R, B, R2, red goes up with the R, then back down to the R2. So it actually ends up in the solve position real quick. Then when we do L, D, L doesn't move red, but D does move red over here. So red moves from here to here. And then F prime, well, red's over here, so it doesn't move with F prime. So we have orange, green, red. Finally, for blue. So blue is right here. Blue is actually the piece that becomes misoriented and moves over here. So when we do R, that doesn't move blue. The B moves blue here. R2 moves blue all the way here. So now blue is right here. L and D don't move blue, but F prime moves blue right here. So finally we have orange, blue, green, red. So orange, blue, green, red. So now we need to actually figure out what the cross solution is going to be from here. So we already have red right here. As you see, green is going to be here. So if we move green down, we have green and then red. And, well, that's the correct relation. So green and red will be solved relative to each other. So whenever we move these, we're going to be thinking of them moving as a unit. So green, red. So since we have green and red, orange goes here and blue goes here, right? So we have orange right here and blue right here. What we can do is do a U prime. What that does is that moves orange here and blue here. R2 to solve it, or at least relative to red. So we have green, blue, red, and we think of this as one unit, like one solved unit. And then orange is right here now, because since orange and blue, we did a U prime, did an R2 to solve blue, that doesn't move orange. Then we need to do another U prime, and now orange is gonna be here. We can do an F2, and now we'll have orange right here. So we'll have green, red, blue, orange. So let's just say we pick blue. We need to see that blue, or we see that blue needs to move here. Orange is to move here. And so we know that the final move has to be a D prime. So RB2 to move this solution, or to move this good edge. So R moves this good edge, R moves this edge here, doing a B, so that we move this good edge here. Now this is the bad edge, R2. So we have 3, then L, D, F prime, and we know that the edges are going to be blue, orange, green, red. So we can do an L to put green and red correctly with each other. U prime, R2, so that because this is orange, this is blue, U prime R2 moves the blue here into here, which is going to be in correct relation to red. Then now orange is here, so we do a U prime F2. And since blue is right here and it needs to go here, we do a D prime finally. So R, B, R2, so orange is going to end up here. And then we do LD, that moves right over here. And then an F prime, and as I said before, orange, blue, green, red. We solve green relative to red. We do a U prime to solve blue right here next to red. Then a U prime F2. Now the cross is all oriented, and then at the end we do a D prime because blue needs to go here as we predicted. And there's Scramble 4. Alright, so now this next section is EO then cross, but this time with some influencing. So essentially the techniques and everything else is the same as before. Same mindset, same principles apply. We're trying to get pieces solved relative to each other, memorizing where they end up after the EO solution. However, this time, really the only thing we're doing differently is just being a bit more mindful of the turns that we make so that we can have just a nicer cross. And it's actually surprising how just one move can really affect an EOCross. The most common example, and I would argue the most important one, is changing the direction of your F and B turns during your EO solution. This can actually have a massive impact on your EOCross. So in this first scramble, I'm going to really demonstrate that. We have a 4 flip here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So our EO solution is literally just F2, U2, and then an F or F prime move, but we don't know which one it's going to be yet, but let's find out. We see that these two cross pieces are not affected by the EO solution at all because it's just F and U turns, and these are not in either of those layers. So we have F2, U2. F2 moves green here, moves red here, and then U2 doesn't do anything because they're down here, not in the U layer. So we have green here. We have red here. So now, should we do F or F prime? So if we do F, what happens is that, so let's look at each cross piece. Green is going to move here, right? So the white is on here, so we need to pay attention. The white goes here. So that means that green is right here above blue. And since red is right here, when we do an F, it's going to solve. So blue and red are going to be correct, but then orange is right here. So it's going to be red and orange are not correct in relation to each other. And then green is going to be right here above blue. If I was to solve the green, it would be green, red, orange. So red and orange are already not correct in relation to each other. And then green and red are not either. So that just sets up for a really bad case. And then if we do an F prime instead, look what happens. If we have the green here, we do F prime, green ends up here. What that means is that blue and green are going to be set up for a one move so that they're in an opposite relation. And then since red is going to end up here and we do an F prime, red's going to move up here. That means since green can go in one move right here, since green will end up here, red's going to be up here. So if we do an R prime F2, we have blue, red, green. That's already 3 pieces correct in relation to each other. And then we just have to worry about the orange, which is a lot nicer. So let's just do it. And I'm going to show both. So we do F2, U2, as you see that these end up here. If we do an F, green ends up here, So red and blue are correct in relation to each other, but red and orange are not. And the green is not in an easy spot to be correct to anything. If we do this, then green and red are not correct in relation to each other. So this is just overall worse. If we do F2, U2, and then we do an F prime instead, as I said before, red ends up here, green ends up here. Green is one move from being in relation to blue, and then the red is just set up to be right in relation with blue and green, like that. So now we have three that are already correct, and orange is here, so we could just do one move like that, and we solved EOCross. So as you can see, just that one turn drastically changed the EOCross and made it significantly better. So I didn't really show tracing the orange piece, but I've done enough of tracing and showing where pieces end up, so you should already know what to do about that. What I really wanted to show is just the direction of the F moves and how that's really important that can change the solution. So same concept as before, you're tracking where the pieces go, but try to be more mindful about which F and B turns you do. Even something that simple will actually help you EOCross this a lot. Alright, so before we get onto the full EOCross section, I want to go over some tricks you can use for both EOCross in general, so that you have just better control of how you influence, because it's going to be a lot more important later when you're just seeing the full EOCross. So this first trick is more of just a cross trick. It's basically using F2 and B2 turns to move cross pieces into where they go. So it's hard to explain, but just let me show you. So right here, we have one move away from, the cross done. So it might seem just obvious, like, okay, well, if I do green here, orange is already above and I can just move right later. So I can do F, R2, U2, L2. That seems kind of obvious, but what's actually better to do here is do an F prime. And then since the green is above and needs to go into an F2 above, I can just move the red here so that when I do an F2, it goes to the red or goes to the other side, and then I can just finish the cross. So you can use, whenever you have an edge that's above the opposite of where it needs to go, and you have a cross that's an F2 away, or a cross piece is an F2 away, try to put it in here or here so that when you do an F2, it ends up where it needs to go and it's just one move away from solved. This might not always help move count, but it will make your stuff a lot more ergonomic, which is really, really nice. So just keep that one in mind. Another trick that you can use is doing F or B turns that don't actually change the number of bad edges, but are simply just for positioning cross edges. So again, it's more of a cross trick, but in this example, we have a 4 flip, 1, 2, 3, 4. We could do something like R, L, D, but that moves a lot of pieces for no reason, right? What we could do here instead is we notice that, okay, these two are misoriented, right? So if we do an F, then what happens is this piece and this piece are now misoriented. So we have two here. When we do an F, now the two are here, right? That doesn't actually change the orientation of the edges, but it allows us to keep this green in place while we move the other cross edges in place. And now we have just an easy setup into the EOCross. Another nice trick for 4 flips is using slice moves, but it's a 3-move slice, or it's a 3-move insert, right? There's different patterns, but it's called the arrow pattern. So this one we have 1, 2, 3. So the bad edges are here like this. We have like an arrow right here, and then an opposite edge here. If we do SRS, we solve EO. And if you notice that it actually preserves the cross. So if we have cross pieces we need to preserve in the bottom, and we have this EO pattern, we can do that. And it solves EO and preserves cross. Or if you can set up to it, if you know that you have just one move here, and it's going to set up to this pattern, you can just solve the cross, then do EO, and it's, still EOCross, but it's just very simple, and it saves a lot of moves. Another one you can look for is MU prime or MUM, just any variation of those. So if we have an arrow here in the front, and then this edge is misoriented, we can do that, and it solves EO. In this case, this cross piece ended up being solved, and it solves the EOCross. So obviously I'm just showing really simple examples here, but play around with MUM prime, SRS prime, or SUS prime, and look at what edges get misoriented and how the cross pieces end up. So I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail about how to use all these, but just know that this is a trick that you can use. You can also do it with E-slices too. So just play around with different slice movements and see how they affect EO, and see if you can implement them to your solves. Another trick here is using wide moves or rotations. So this is more of just an ergonomics trick, but like for example, it's just a two flip. You can do FU F prime, sorry, F prime U prime F. No, actually like that. Also, this is more of an ergonomic tip, but you can use wide moves in your solutions. So for example, this, to solve it, you need to do that and then like that. So that can be a little, if you're doing very righty dominant turns, doing all these lefty moves can be a bit awkward. What you can do here, just as like a quick example, you can do, which is really fast and it's more righty dominant. So there's different ways you can incorporate wide moves into your solves or your solutions. Again, this is something you need to experiment with yourself because like I can't really go over all of those examples here, but just keep in mind that you can use wide moves. Another thing is that if you have a lot of F and B turns, so like for example like this, what you can do is you can rotate and do them as UD moves. If you have like a lot of F and B, you can do just an X into basically RUD. So keep that in mind as well. You can also do EOCross from a Y rotation away and then rotate. Just make sure you understand like where your orientation is. But there's just different things you can do with ergonomics. You can do rotations, you can do slice moves, you can do wide moves. So just keep these in mind. Of course, you don't have to use any of these tricks, but they're just something there that you can use, something that you can have for influencing, something you can have for ergonomics, but just something to keep in mind. All right, then on to Scramble 1. So honestly, this is really hard to show like a streamlined process of what anyone does because at this level, EOCross is just so freeform that it's really just a matter of like what you see first. Not everyone's gonna see the same solution. So I'll just try to go over like what I'm kind of thinking in my head and like things that I'm like, thinking during inspection, like while planning to try to get a good solution in 15 seconds. So here I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flip. Right. So normally I would do 3 plus 3 here. The thing is that whenever I have like edges opposite, and then I have like another misoriented edge in one of these, like the EO solutions kind of are annoying when that happens. So I kind of want to avoid that. And then I have one move from doing 4 plus 2, which could be nicer here, especially because that'll solve orange. And when I see I have two opposite misoriented edges, I can move one out of the way, do F, U, F prime, or just an F turn, move in bad edge here, another F turn, and that'll move across edge that's on top to bottom. So I can already have two solved. And if I have two solved adjacent to each other, the next two should not be that hard to solve. So I'm like thinking, all right, so I have already two here that are going to be solved relatively nicely. And like I'll just solve the rest. So then from here, I'll start tracking like where the other pieces are going to go. So I said I was going to do a D to put all 4 here. Since I don't want to put red on the bottom because it's not going to be solved in relation, so I'll put red on top, so I'll do a B prime. So we'll do D, B prime. So that solves orange, that puts blue here, and now I just have these. So what I'll do is I'll probably do an L prime, F prime, U to move this one here, and another F prime. What that does is that solves green and orange, right? And then red's going to be right here. And then blue will be up here. So we have red, blue. Green and orange are going to be solved. And then red is going to be, red is going to be right here. And then blue's going to be right here. Red's going to be right here, blue's going to be right here. That means that red is an L2 away. All I have to do is just U2, B2 to solve blue. So the EOCross ends up working out. So D, B prime, right? What that does is put orange here and then blue here. I'm gonna do an L prime that doesn't move any cross edges. As you can see, I kind of like think of it like an elevator. I'm moving it down and I solve the two. And now look, red is here and blue is here. I can just solve red like that and just do a U2, B2. And there's EOCross. So nothing standard, as I was kind of just going off of what I saw. But I'm looking for like specific things, specific EO patterns I've seen before. Ways that I can try to solve two adjacent cross edges already, and I noticed that the rest of it will just kind of work out, and I ended up just going with that solution, and it worked out. Really, when you're planning EOCross, the thing that's important is, I don't want to say move count is not important, because it definitely is, but ease of planning is more important than move count, because it's better to have like a 10 move EOCross you can plan as opposed to an 8 move EOCross that you couldn't plan, because then you can actually start tracking first pair and stuff like that. So really what's important is planning. So do the first thing that you can see. So what I was showing is what I saw in my brain. I wasn't trying to go for any kind of insane move count. Of course, you do want to try to keep move count as low as possible again, but ease of planning, that's really what's most important. All right, for Scramble 2, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 flip. This is actually a great example because it looks crazy. What would I see? Okay, so something I noticed, first of all, is green is here, blue is here. So I already have 4 here. If I just do 4 now, then I have a 6 flip, which is nice. So I would just do a, what is this? A B prime, and then we'll put blue here and green will stay. And just based off the rest of the 6 flip, I can see that doing an F prime will actually set me up for a relatively nice solution. And F prime won't affect green at all. The only move that green will be affected by is if I do an F prime, that puts the 1 bad edge here, and I can move this one here and then do a UD, and then UD will not affect green, and blue will still be here because I didn't do any L moves because this move's already here. That's actually really, really nice. And so then I'm thinking, all right, okay, so I have 2 opposite. That's pretty good. So then where would my other pieces go? So when I do the B prime, nothing happens. When I do F prime, red is going to be here, which means that when I finally do the solution, since I'm not moving red, blue's going to be here, red's going to be here, and then I can just do an R for green. So I have blue, red, green, which is actually really nice. The orange one, like I don't care what, since I have 3 cross pieces that are going to be solved at the end of the EO solution, I don't really care like what happens to the 4th one. So let me just like trace it and plan where it's going. So as you see, like what I'm doing is I'm trying to see which EO solution solve as many cross pieces as possible. Then like the last 1 or 2 cross pieces, then I'll just like trace out where it goes and like through the EO solution, and then I'll just worry about it at the end, if that makes sense. So I already kind of know where blue, red, and orange are going to be, or sorry, blue, red, and green are going to be. So let me do orange. So I do B prime. B prime, what that does is that puts orange here, right? And then I do an F prime that doesn't do anything. I do an R. That puts orange here. And then green, or green's right here. So green's going to go like that with an R. And then orange is going to go like, it's going to go here. Then when I do UD, that's going to put orange here. And that's actually really nice. It happens to work out really, really nicely because red's going to be here. Or when I do the F prime, red's going to be here. Blue's going to be up here from going here. And then green is going to be here. So then the EOCross actually just pretty much solves itself after this. So let me show you what I mean. When I do B prime, blue ends up here. Orange is here. And then here I have a 6 flip. The 6 flip is really nice because when I do this F prime, it preserves this cross piece. So I don't have to do any L moves. I don't have to mess up this blue at all. And then the red, I know when I do the last move is going to be an F prime. So I put this into here. I know, since I said before, green and blue are going to stay here. They're not going to be moved when I do the UD and the F prime. So UD keeps red here. So like I said, I already have the blue, red, green thing going on. Do an F prime, that solves EO. And I got lucky. I always say I traced it during inspection, right? Like as I was showing you. The orange happens to be solved, but even if it wasn't, it might have been like in the ULA or something. But it doesn't matter because I already had 3 pieces that were going to work out. And then, well, I forgot to show you like tracing it, but I would have also traced, since I know that blue's going to end up here. Since blue needs to go here, the last move would have been a D, and there's EOCross. So as you can see, like a lot of freeform kind of like split-second decision making. And that definitely just comes with practice because it's not something you can just, like there's no step-by-step process. It really is just, you have to do solutions. The one thing that definitely does help though is that you learn how to just do EO then cross. You're comfortable with EO. So if you notice there, I wasn't like being restricted by the EO. I was thinking, oh, how can I do the EO? Oh, I'll do this because this and whatnot. As opposed to just like, oh, I'm like trying to fit the cross around the EO. Like I was trying to look at the cross pieces and see if the EO solution would fit around the cross solution. So in general, that's probably the better way to do it. And so overall, you just have to practice. It really is something that's you have to practice. But yeah, that's really it, just practice. All right, so finally, I just want to go over some tips for just like how to do it. So just some general tips that you can use to your advantage. So the first one, and I think the most important one, is use unlimited inspection. You're not just gonna be good at EOCross by just trying to do it in 15 seconds, because you're not gonna give yourself time to like really explore how far you can plan. You absolutely need to do unlimited inspection solves. You'll basically, if you just do it for a while and you just mess around, you'll start seeing patterns you've never noticed before. So unlimited inspection is an absolute must. That's like probably the most important tip I have. Something else is just kind of a mindset tip. Don't try to make it harder than it actually is. Like, I understand EOCross is definitely difficult, but don't, if you keep telling yourself how difficult it is, you're never going to want to do it. Your brain's just naturally going to avoid things that are hard. If you tell yourself how hard it is, then you're never going to want to do it. Of course, be realistic. Don't literally pretend like, oh, it's super incredibly easy, free, I can do this all the time. And then you are not able to do it right away and you get discouraged. Be reasonable about it. Tell yourself, yeah, it's hard, but it's not that bad. I can definitely do this. Like, stuff like that. Just kind of more of a mindset tip. And so, something I mentioned earlier, but just something also I want to reiterate. However much you plan or decide to plan, if you're just like a complete beginner and you really cannot do full EOCross, and you just want to stop at doing EO+2 edges and you feel comfortable doing that, and like that's like your goal for now, try to track pieces during inspection. Don't, like, if you say you can plan EO+2, make sure you can really plan EO+2. Make sure that you're not just like looking for the 2 cross edges that you planned, because you need to be tracking pieces that you haven't planned. And if you can plan full EOCross, then try to track the pieces of your first pair. Basically, always try to track pieces. This will help you just advance your planning more, like I explained earlier, but I just kind of want to reiterate it. And then something kind of I said indirectly, but I didn't really like directly or explicitly say, is like I was showing with the advanced EOCross, is more of an advanced EOCross tip. Plan a skeleton EO, like kind of have an idea of what you're gonna do with EO, but like be ready to change the solution multiple times to fit whatever cross you're doing. So yeah, pretty much there's just a lot. It's hard. I understand it's hard, but there's definitely some stuff you can do. So here's some tips, just mindset stuff to think about. All right, and this is the end of the video. So thank you all for watching. If this was helpful for you, then leave a like. If there's any other questions or you feel like there's something I missed, then leave a comment and we'll try to, maybe update the resource, make something new, maybe more tips or something. If there's anything else that you think is missing, just please tell me, because there's not many ZZ resources right now. So we're just trying to get out resources so that we can have people learning